Hi, welcome everyone. Tonight I'm having an author chat with Alyssa Maxwell and Clara McKenna. I'm so glad you guys can all join us. And we are taking your questions and comments. We're going to just have a lot of fun chatting and talking about books, but you are welcome to post your comments and questions, and we will get to those later in the night. We'd love to hear from you, and I'm just checking to make sure we are live. And oh my goodness, there we go. Yes, we are. Awesome. It's always good to know it is working. So first off, I want to let the ladies kind of introduce themselves. Most of you probably know exactly who they are and love their books, just like I do. So I'm going to start with Alyssa Maxwell. Can you tell us a little bit about what you write?
I write the Gilded Newport Mysteries and A Lady and Lady's Maid Mysteries. Right now, my latest book is Murder at Wakehurst, which is one of the Gilded Newport Mysteries. For anybody who doesn't know, they feature a sleuth, Emma Cross, who is a distant Vanderbilt cousin. She's a Newporter born and raised, and she's a journalist. So this puts her in a unique position to be able to go sleuthing around town, both in the town itself and at what they call the cottages, the Gilded Age mansions along Bellevue Avenue. And it seems that anytime Emma is around, whether it's a party or a picnic or a lawn party, whatever, someone gets murdered and Emma is on the case.
She's in the right place or the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah, always.
And then I have also Clara McKenna. Can you tell us a little bit about your latest series and your latest release?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I write the Stella and Lindy historical mystery series. It's set in 1905 Edwardian England. Stella is Miss Stella Kendrick is the daughter of a Kentucky horse breeder who goes to England for what she thinks is a wedding, not knowing in the first book that it's supposed to be her own, that her father has kind of sold her off like one of his thoroughbreds to a impoverished Viscount, who is Lindy in the series. So the first book, they kind of get to know each other. And the latest book is Murder at Key Haven Castle. And that is, they're finally planning their wedding, and it's 3 days away. And as with all weddings, people kind of descend from all parts of the globe to come to the wedding. So she's an American and he's British. So he's got his Yorkshire cousins coming down, and she's got an aunt and an uncle from the States coming over. And all these personalities and guests collide. And as I like to say, bad things happen. So
all that family comes in, it causes problems.
Yeah. We all been to weddings like that, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys just a little bit about your backgrounds. Like, where did you grow up? Kind of your families? Where did you get your love for reading and books and college? What did you do in college? Just kind of give us a little background about who you are, where you came from. So how about you go, Clara, first?
Oh, okay. I'm originally from upstate New York. I was born and raised in the same house that my grandfather was born and raised. My house has been in the family for 90 years, so very much roots. Yeah. And I met my husband at Syracuse University in the biology department. And the day after we got married, we moved to Europe. So it was a pure cut from all my roots, and I flew away. So after that, but before that, I went to an all-women's college, Wells College in upstate New York, and got a degree in biology. And I worked with primates and sea mammals before I met my husband. And then after that, we moved. I think it was 6 times in 5 years or something crazy like that.
Wow.
And we lived in Finland. We lived in Quebec, Canada. We lived in 2 places in Texas. And then now we live in Iowa. So in all the meantime of that, I got a master's degree in library science, and I worked as an academic librarian for a while before I came to writing. So yeah, a little bit of a circuitous route.
So you've been a lot of places. You're well-traveled.
I am. I've been to all 50 states except for Alaska and New Mexico.
Oh, wow. That is on my bucket list. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm in the 30s, but I'm not close yet to 50.
And I've only been to 3 continents, but you know, I'm working on another one. So
that's cool. Very cool. How about you, Alyssa?
Yeah, nothing as exciting as that. Clara, I think I want your life. Although I will say that I have been to New Mexico and Alaska. Isn't that funny? So if you want to know anything.
So between the two of you, you've been to all of them.
But not a lot of the other ones. But I was born in New York on Long Island and lived there till I was just starting high school when we moved up to Connecticut. And at first I was horrified by that. You know, I was a New Yorker and moving to Connecticut. I thought, you know, they're taking me to the back of beyond, but I really, really bonded with New England. I loved it. I loved the history. I loved the architecture. There was a little red schoolhouse from the 1700s down the street from where I lived. I mean, I just absorbed everything about it. And my friends and I loved to hike and go, you know, once we could drive, we loved to go exploring the towns and you know, the areas around where I lived. I attended the University of Connecticut. I was an English major. I have always wanted to be a writer. I mean, for as long as I could remember, that was a goal of mine, but I thought I would probably do something a little bit more practical with it, like, you know, journalism or, I don't know, technical writing, something practical. But, you know, in the back of my mind, I always knew that it was, you know, I wanted to write fiction. But I didn't know how to get started, and college really didn't prepare me for how to write a novel. So that was still very much up in the air, and I went into editing early on. But everything kind of began to come together for me when I went to Newport to visit some friends and ended up a couple of years later meeting my husband and learning what it was to be a Newporter from, you know, from actual eyes of people who had lived there and you know, their generations had been in Newport. And yeah, so, I mean, it took me years longer to finally decide I'm going to write something set in Newport. But as soon as I did, as soon as I began, it was like I had come home. You know, the writing came together, my settings, you know, everything was just really came alive once I did. You know, they say write what you know, and I always kind of poo-pooed that. And you don't have to write exactly what you know, but when you can, there really is a very deep connection. And that's what I found with my Gilded Newport Mysteries.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd known about your Newport connection, you know, and that, did you ever talk to anybody who was, well, gosh, I don't know, maybe it would be too long, but like was alive during the era you write in? I mean, like it was very, very old. I mean, probably not. I mean, it'd be really,
no.
Yeah,
no,
that'd be
no.
I mean, that would be like 1 year old, you know?
You know, the books take place, yeah, they begin in 1895 and I'm up to
95.
1995.
Okay. I knew it was like right before.
My husband's grandfather was a part owner of Manuel Brothers Moving Company, and they existed during the Gilded Age, and they used to move furnishings in and out of the cottages in the summer months, and also brought props and costumes to the Newport Opera House. So, you know, I did sort of have a connection a generation removed.
That's cool. That's
yeah,
cool.
but close enough that I got an idea of what went on at the time.
Well, I have to say, I find that, okay, so you're setting in the Newport and the using of the cottage is just genius. Like it's so perfect for a series. And it was like right for somebody to do that. And you have done such a brilliant job. And, you know, I mean, it really is. It's such a great idea. And I love you get to highlight all these different cottages. I mean, like, you know, which I'm sure you find the research fascinating. We all find it fascinating. We all want to peek in the door of, are you running out of, I don't know how many cottages there are. Are you starting to run out, or is there a lot more to pick from?
I haven't yet, but I've also toyed with the idea of focusing on some of the ones that have been torn down. And some of them were actually torn down by my husband's family's company.
Wow.
Because in the 20s, they were already becoming white elephants. And this moving company diversified into, what do you call it?
Demolition?
Thank you. Demolition and reclamation. So they not only took some of those houses down, but they built smaller houses, especially in the point section of Newport on the water, on the harbor, and used some of the old woodwork. And we toured a couple of houses, yes, that they built, and saw some of that original woodwork that had been in the cottages.
Very, very cool.
I forget what your question was, but yeah.
Oh no, I'm just kind of commenting, and I love too, you've done a brilliant job with setting, Clara. Like a lot of your first 3 books are New Forest, which doesn't get used a lot, and it's a gorgeous area of England. Like, I guess, how did you land on using that area? And I mean, I know you visited and everything, right?
Right. Yeah. So when I was trying to think of the setting, like you said, there's so many spectacular places in England, but I had this weird idea that because Stella is such a horse-oriented person, she's basically spent more time with horses than her family. And so I wanted a place where she would feel comfortable eventually, because I knew she was going to have to make a new life here. And so I admit this, I just kind of Googled best, equestrian trails in England, or best places to ride your horse, or best places to stable your horses. And time again, the New Forest came up. And I have to admit, I was not that familiar with the New Forest. It's only 90 kilometers southwest of London, and I'd never been there. And so, I started looking into it, and I thought, wow, not only is it like this really, it's like a unique, kind of managed natural area. It's like it's been managed, almost for like 2,000 years by the local people, but it has some really interesting, like socio-political rules that don't govern any other part of England. So it was just kind of a really interesting place to research and to set it. And like you said, it wasn't some place that a lot of people knew about, which in some ways is probably a good thing. In some places, probably not so much. There's a reason why everybody, puts it in, certain parts of the country, UK, because people are familiar with it. But for me, I tend to go for the little bit more hidden gem sort of places, and I think I've introduced a lot more people to this really neat little part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that Stella is an American. I mean, we see the romances where it's the American heiresses that come over to, England and marry the gentleman, but we don't see that in mysteries a lot. And I thought that was a wonderful angle. I mean, was that like a conscious choice? Like, was that one of your first kind of plot things you came up with? I mean, and what does it allow you to do that you wouldn't necessarily be able to explore if she was English?
Well, I definitely wanted her to be American because, as Alyssa said, I wanted to write what I knew. I'm not a Brit, so of course I end up having to write a lot of British characters. But my main protagonist, I thought I'd be smart to keep her an American. But then I also like that fish out of water concept. So that that's from the get-go, she's not like everybody else, just being an American. And then being from a wealthy American family, why would she be there? Or, what would bring her to England besides tourism, that sort of thing. And of course, like Alyssa's, the research from Newport and Consuelo Vanderbilt and some of these other, high society ladies that were from the good old families, and they still went over there. So what about a Kentucky horse breeder's ambitions? How would they make it over there? So it would definitely I definitely specifically thought, oh, okay, this has got to be like one of those women who she's got lots of money and she needs a husband. So, but then of course the twist is she doesn't want the husband, her father does. And again, that's a lot like, you know, the Vanderbilt's got some of that family.
Right.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this, y'all's series, they intersect a little bit in exploring kind of that it's the America and England intersection and the high society. I mean, like Newport was like our aristocracy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, people think we don't have noblemen here, but we really had an upper class. I mean, we still do, you know. And so I love both of your series explore those different areas. I mean, which is really interesting. You know, and I think, I don't know if you guys agree with me, World War I was such a change, like a break off. And so this explores that era. It's like kind of that last era before that, before the modern times. I mean, do you guys find that too?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're right about American society having an aristocracy back then. I mean, they divided up not only by wealth, but by how long their families had been there and how many generations they had made their money. So that, you know, the last several generations haven't had to work so much. The Vanderbilts were considered upstarts and nouveau riche because their wealth was only 3 generations back, whereas Mrs. Astor's was, I don't know, 6 or 7. So there was a real hierarchy, and trying to break into that top echelon was very difficult. And, you know, people were met with a lot of resistance. But as you got into the 20th century, that began to become even less and less. And then, of course, by World War I and the 1920s, all of that just went by the wayside. And it was basically money. You know,
Right.
Anybody with money could enter, at least in America, that class of, you know, the elite wealth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in England to a certain extent, I mean, there was still, you know, the snobbery, but because so many of the aristocracy was so broke, you know, it was like you had, they needed the new blood and the new money and yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I was also going to say, Alyssa, your newest book, it's not a Renaissance festival, but it's essentially a Renaissance festival that happens in the book, which I love. And I saw you had pictures and stuff. Did you and your husband go to a lot of Renaissance festivals? What about, I'm going to jump to you, Claire, about that too. I mean, I've been to a few, so I'm just curious. So.
Yes, we are Ren Fair nerds. We haven't been in a few years, but up until that, we had gone, I don't know, every year for like 20 years in costume.
That's awesome.
We do the archery and you know, go to all the shows, and we really enjoy it. So when I read that James Van Allen, who owned Wakehurst, was a real Anglophile and just loved the Elizabethan age, it wasn't a far stretch to imagine that that's the kind of garden party he would throw. So it was a lot of fun, and all I had to do was think back on things that I had experienced, you know, the sword fighting, the joust, and the jesters running around with their bells, and the actors up on stage. So yeah, I just devised a whole miniature Renaissance festival to get the story going, and you know, find a fresh murder weapon that I hadn't used before, which is, you know, it's right on the cover of the book, so I'm not giving anything away, an arrow.
I know we do run out of murder weapons after a while, don't we?
Not
I was
really.
thinking maybe a turkey leg, you know, those big,
Bludgeon him to death, yes.
or choke him, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Big. Ooh, you know, that's right. Yes, that's good.
I know, whenever you can come up with something novel, right? You're like, yeah.
You know, I find with every book so far, I mean, yes, I've resorted to pistols and knives and things like that for the later murders, but my initial murder, I've been able to really come up with something different for just about every book, I think, just based on where they are at the time.
Right.
You know, what's
Right.
available, what's within hand that we can use. And it's so many things.
Have you been to any Renaissance festivals, Clara? I mean, like, or have you gotten into that kind of stuff, or?
No, I went to I think two when I was probably like 10 years old, like 8, 9, 10. They used to have one very close, not too far from my house. But nothing since I, probably was a teenager, not in a long, long time. But like I said, that turkey leg was very, that struck, I remember that from a long time ago, 30 years later, and I'm still remember that turkey leg. I was very impressed with that, but no, not since I was a little kid. No.
Well, I'm going to check here in a minute, but anyone watching, if you have any questions you want to ask, just pop them in, or comments. Although I'll have you guys read the comments afterwards, just so I'm not just reading those out. The other thing I want to talk about, I love obviously, I like mysteries that have kind of a romantic subplot. So I love y'all's couple characters. I mean, like the developing romances. And I mean, Clara, like Stella and Lindy are such a great pair. I mean, have you had fun, working with them and getting them together and developing all of that?
Yeah, I have. I really have. And even more so knowing that it wasn't supposed to be that way. Originally, the series was just supposed to be about Stella, and Lindy was kind of supposed to be a bad guy who got killed off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, I had an editor suggest that, oh no, they should be a detective duo. And I thought, oh, okay, I've got to really change this guy's character because he was a nasty piece of work. And so that's kind of when I created her father being the nasty, kind of transferred his attributes and made Lindy a little bit nicer of a good guy. So
I like Lindy. I like him a lot.
I love him. Yes, they are so adorable together. I can't get enough of them. They're just like a breath of fresh air because they're so they're ingenuous. They're just they're honest. They're what they are, and yeah, there's no when they come together, they're at their best. Two of them, yeah. They bring out the best in each other. I love them.
Absolutely. And Emma and Derek now. I mean, and in the beginning we weren't sure. So
no, she wasn't sure. I actually was not sure. I went back and forth. I really did. But then I realized her other choice was the easy choice for her life because Jessie fit right in. I know I'm like, this is a spoiler for people who haven't, caught up with the series.
Yeah.
But as a Newporter and somebody from her own economic class and all of that, I felt it made it a little bit too easy. Whereas with Derek, there would always be those conflicts of, his society feeling that maybe she's not good enough for him, and maybe people thinking she married him for his money, and so there would always be those little tugs at their happiness. So I thought, let's give him a challenge.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Sometimes series need those challenges, right? That's what they thrive on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's one thing with Stella and Lindy. I thought, well, with their parents, they have enough challenges that they can be a team together against the rest of the world. So.
They need each other. They need that bulwark.
Yes.
So let's see. I'm trying to check my notes here. I know that it's not the latest book, but we were talking a little bit that you're taking your characters to Yorkshire, Clara, for your next book, which I'm excited about because I obviously like Yorkshire. So
obviously your book is set in Yorkshire.
Yeah, the latest one. Yeah. So have you had a lot of fun? So the first three were largely in the New Forest area, pretty much exclusively. And so now has it been fun to get to branch out and to do a different area?
It is. It's also, a kind of a clean break because I don't want to have spoilers, but
right.
The three books kind of complete an arc that we're all kind of expecting. And so it was kind of nice to just kind of break away completely from the families, from the responsibilities of the manor house and all the duties and all the hoopla of the wedding and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of go off in a totally different place, just the two of them. So yeah, it's fun in terms of their experience, because this is kind of a new experience for Stella. Because most of the book is, I'd say, yeah, a majority of the book is set in York, and then also in the Dales, Yorkshire Dales. And so again, we get to see this new place through her eyes, because she's never been there before either, except for a racetrack not too far away. She did go there for a race, but only got to, she didn't get to really experience the area. So that's why she said, oh, I want to go back there and let's really, and so, yeah, it has been fun. And luckily I've been there, so I didn't have to do a research trip to write the book.
Tricky right now.
Yeah, since COVID. So it's nice that I've been there and can experience, use that experience. Yep.
Very cool. Yeah, and I love also in the eras that you guys are in, you get to use like all these new technology. Like, I mean, Stella showing up in the motor car, and I mean, one of your most recent ones had a motor car, Alyssa, like very early motor car that was used. I mean, so I mean, it's such a great. It's a great time period. It just is for mysteries and like developing, and you have new technology to use in your sleuthing, but also you have to rely on really the old methods. I mean, because they're not established yet. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a great time period.
That's what I love about reading historical mysteries, is because you have to rely on your wits and your ability to track things down and getting people's faces and like that. There are no forensics really, or very little. So it's more of a challenge for them and for me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm getting, in 1905, I'm kind of getting to, closer to some of the more, a few forensic things. And I actually have one of my detectives mention the new fangled fingerprinting he's heard about, but he's not quite sure about it yet, but it's coming. So yeah, it's also kind of fun because, I mean, it's a little more of a challenge because you have to do the research, but because it is a transition, especially like say London versus a country estate.
Right.
London in 1905, they'd have, electric lighting and telephones and indoor plumbing, and a country estate, it's like, what's all that? I don't, they haven't quite. So there's a lot of, different things going on. So you have both gas light and electric light and, all those kind of fun things. So
which can get tricky. It's like you're trying to figure out where they have what, but also you can kind of fudge it a little bit, because you can be like, well, on this state, they don't happen to have it.
Well, that's what's fun about the Newport cottages. Most of them had electricity because they were built in the 1890s, most of them. So they were built with that brand new technology. Whereas, an older country house was built either without anything or with just gas. And it took them longer to be able to bring electricity and get the whole house wired. Mm-hmm. So in Newport, it was there right from the start.
That's cool.
Right. That's how they built them.
Yeah. That's neat. Yeah. Didn't they also have some gas built at the same time?
Yes, they had both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of the ladies didn't like the way they looked under the lighting. So
very harsh. Yeah.
yeah, like me. I got all these shadows going on here. Like, where's my light? Where's my gas light?
Everywhere. Yes.
We all need the ring lights.
My son's that's gone, so now I've got the harsh light. But I remember that when I went to I did one of those tours in Newport. I remember them talking about how they specifically had to add some gas because one of the families wanted that for when they had balls or something like that, so that it looked a little bit softer. I think that's so much fun.
That is fun. Nice little detail.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a little bit of time if you have any questions you want to ask these ladies. We'll be here for a few more minutes. So go ahead and pop those in. And I want to hear what's next for you guys. What do you guys have coming up? Alyssa, you go ahead and go. What's next for you?
Well, my next Lady and Ladies Maid book is coming out at the end of December, which is so weird because I actually have 3 books coming out this year.
Oh, wow.
It's a January release, but you know how they come out, the week before. So it's coming out December 28th. It's called A Deadly Endowment, and I brought the family back home to Foxwood Hall. I was inspired a little bit by Clue, like kind of that,
Oh, fun.
so did it in the library with the rope kind of murder to set things off. But what I'm doing is, because World War I, we were saying changed so many things, and the old fortunes were not what they used to be. Well, Phoebe has decided to open Foxwood Hall to tours.
Oh, yeah.
Which, began to happen in the 20th century.
Right.
Her grandmother is absolutely appalled and completely against it. Grandpapa, who is just a darling, kind soul, sees the sense in it, because Phoebe wants to bring people in, not so much to raise money for themselves, but they want to bring people into the village to buy from the shopkeepers and raise some money to help the tenant farmers and that kind of thing. So he goes along with it. So she's got her grandmother, her older sister Julia, and her brother Fox are dead set against this idea, and then Grandpapa, her younger sister Amelia, and Phoebe, and of course Eva, the lady's maid, are all on board. Unfortunately, things don't go very well.
Of course.
And, that kind of sets them on an investigation that takes them throughout the village in some places we haven't seen before. A bookshop out on a lonely road that's a little bit suspicious, and a doctor who's new to the area and also is not quite what he seems to be. But after having the prior book, A Sinister Service, set in Staffordshire, it was nice to come home to the Cotswolds again and be with the whole family and see some more of the village.
Fun. So that's late December, is that right?
Late December, yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Clara? What's coming up for you?
Well, like you said, I'm working on the book 4 in the series, and that is called Murder at the Majestic Hotel. Mm-hmm. And Stella and Lindy are on their honeymoon, so that gives you a hint. And they and kind of the idea is they show up to this. It's supposed to be the nicest, poshest, upscale hotel in town, and they've reserved the best suite in the entire hotel, only to find that somebody gave their suite away. And so of course you can imagine Lindy is not so pleased. This is his honeymoon and he wants that room. But of course it is Stella and Lindy, and it's their honeymoon, so of course somebody is going to die in the suite that they were supposed to be in. So
I love that. It is them, and of course
they have such bad luck, right?
I know that was the fun of writing a series with sleuths, right? Because they have the worst luck of all of these dead bodies. Unless they're a police inspector or something, but right. When you have amateur sleuths, they just have rotten luck, right?
They do. Yeah.
You have to get creative.
One thing that was really fun for me is my first book, I had Stella meet the King of England at the time, Edward, hence the Edwardian era. But I don't usually use real people. I knew he would be at that, at the Derby, and so I could kind of fudge a little, introduction scene with him or whatever. But one of the things that was fun is I discovered that Queen Victoria's youngest daughter, who is Princess Beatrice of Battenberg, she and her daughter, who actually in a few months' time would become the Queen of Spain, they happened to coincide a visit in York with Stella and Lindy's honeymoon.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, they were doing an unveiling of a statue of Queen Victoria. And so I thought, when I came across that little tidbit, I thought, oh, okay, I have to involve that. So we do get to meet a little bit more of Queen Victoria's children and grandchildren. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love when you find those little things, and you're like, I've got to stick that, I did that. I found out Michael Collins was in the Irish Michael Collins was in London at one point, like for like 2 days in secret. And I'm like, okay, she has to see him. Just happen to see him.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this in some way.
Some way.
But
Whatever it takes.
But it does, you brought up something interesting. I mean, Alyssa, you do use real people. I mean, they're not usually they're not your main characters, but you use real people, and which can be a balancing act. I mean, how I guess, how do you manage it? Like, how do you feel that, how do you proceed to do it, I guess?
It depends on how much information is available about, any particular family that owned the house I'm writing about. Sometimes there's just so much, and so they become stronger characters, and they have a lot more role in the story. For some of them that maybe, they were just not as prominent with historical figures, they're more in the background. They own the house, they come in and out, but they're really not, they're not, they don't take a large part of the story. I learn as much as I can about them and try to keep them as close to, what I perceive their personalities as being, and try not to put, the wrong kind of words in their mouth. I tend to grow really fond of these people the more I read about them. So I do try to treat them with respect and a balance, because we're talking about the robber barons on one hand,
Right.
but they were also philanthropists, and they were families a lot like our own in many ways. They had, the same kinds of aspirations and family angst and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I try to treat them as human beings. James Van Allen, as I said, was an Anglophile, so he's a little bit of a funny character in the story. He goes around using Elizabethan jargon and and things like that. But that was true. That was true to life. But as far as the Vanderbilts go, I mean, again, robber barons, but yet huge philanthropists. Big family, and I'm so fond of them now that I feel like they're my own, distant relatives.
I love that.
Yeah.
We did have a question. How's Phoebe's romance coming along?
Slowly. Phoebe and Owen are they're a team. But they're separate a lot, because unfortunately his holdings are in Yorkshire and she's in the Cotswolds, so they can't always be together. And I kind of like that, because I didn't want her to grow too dependent on him. He's older than she is, not by a lot, but by several years. And she, in the beginning, was very young. And I wanted her to grow on her own and come to depend upon herself before she, depended upon a man. So I definitely slowed that down quite a bit. So we see him more in some books than in others. He always at least gets a mention, and sometimes he does show up. But really, those books are about Phoebe and Eva. And, if you're looking for a grand romance in every book, it's not going to be there.
Yeah. But it's progressing. So Betsy, you know that. So. Well, we're going to wrap it up, and I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I want to thank Clara and Alyssa for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I love getting to chat with and getting to see my author friends. We haven't seen it forever, right? So anyway, thank you all for joining us, and I am going to pop links to the latest books in the comments after this is over. So if you're interested in checking out their books, please do. So anyway, I hope everyone has a wonderful night.